My name is Jeremy Grandstaff. I'm on the program committee with ACB of Virginia. I'm a recent addition to that committee, so I'm really excited to be facilitating tonight's conversation. The purpose of our dialogue tonight really is to dig into entrepreneur activities, to learn more about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, how some amazing entrepreneurs that we all know got started, and to hear a little bit more about their journey. And we will obviously have time for Q&A and some discussion. And we will also have some resources at the end for those of you who stay after, some great resources on how you can get yourself started. Before I turn it over to Doug for a quick review of the logistics. So, Doug.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Take us through logistics, my brother.
Yes, yes. So I know some people have been on more Zoom calls than others. Just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. We are expecting, a lot of people tonight. So I think after I finish with the logistics, I think I'm going to ask Sam to mute all of us, and then just unmute Tricia and JJ and Jeremy, so that cut down on the background noise. So I think that covers all the bases, Jeremy.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. Thank you to all of the program committee and to all of you for being here. As I said, this is really about digging into the journey of entrepreneurial spirits, as I like to say. Entrepreneurism has, I cannot say that word. Being an entrepreneur has a very special place in my heart personally for many reasons. One, I have ran my own business for about 20 years. But number two, what I see happening a lot in our community is a desire to really branch out and say, I can build something, and I want to build something, and I want to be able to take that to the next level. For JJ and Tricia, the reason that I had approached the committee and asked if we could do a panel with the two of them, I'm seriously impressed with both. JJ, or some may call you Jason, I suppose, although I just learned that this year. That's the funny part. Has been doing this for quite some time. Tricia, you've been doing this for quite some time as well. And when I think about two people who represent the spirit of entrepreneurial activities and being able to start a business that is surviving and that is really thriving and also making a difference in the community, these are the two people that I think of. So what we had planned to do is just give each of them about 10 to 15 minutes to talk through their journey, to really tell you how they got started, some of the things that they did in the beginning to make sure that it was going to succeed, and just to kind of share their story a little bit. And then we will continue into a Q&A and give you an opportunity to ask both questions. But for right now, as both of them introduce themselves and tell their story, I'm going to ask you to listen to their story through a different lens. See, many times we are trained to listen to people, to debate, to say, oh, how can I say that that's right or wrong? Or how can I talk about how my journey is different than this journey? And it's something that's ingrained in us from when we're little kids, right? If you recall being in grade school and hearing, well, Jim is so-and-so right on the answer that they put on the board. So we're always trained to approach things from that frame of mind. And tonight, as you're listening to JJ's story and to Tricia's story, I'd like to ask you to do it with a seeking of understanding, to figure out what wisdom are they sharing with you that gives you an opportunity to build your own and to build off. And then I'll come to you. JJ, I'll try to give you like 5 minutes left without interrupting you. I meant to tell these guys this beforehand, but we had some technical difficulties. So JJ, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Well, it's so great to have you with us. Why don't you take a moment to just tell us about your story, and would want people to know about your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure. And you said 10 to 15?
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity. So for anyone who doesn't know who I am, my name is JJ Meadow. I live in Michigan. I'm in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which a lot of people think is a fake city, but it's actually a real city. And I've run a company now since 2008 called AT Guys, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But as you were talking about backtracking, I want to kind of backtrack a little bit for how I got there. So I went to college. here in Kalamazoo at Western Michigan University, graduated there with the intent. I got a computer-related telecommunications degree, dabbled in some other things, got a business minor, and kind of had an idea that I wanted to be in tech because I've always liked playing with gadgets and tech and toys and things like that, but didn't really have the exact idea of what I wanted to do. So tried a lot of things, failed a lot, as well. Kind of, it took me a while to get through college. I tried some random business ventures online. You find things and sell them on eBay or do other things. And sometimes it worked out, and definitely sometimes it did not. So you learn a lot as you go along. But in the midst of that, during college, I and a friend of mine at the time started a website that many of you might remember called Blind Bargains. And what Blind Bargains was, and I say was because we don't really update it much anymore, but Blind Bargains was a website that started out by posting a lot of deals. So what we noticed is you would have, I don't know, say a talking clock, and you could find it on the blindness catalogs or whatever stores you could find. They'd sell it for 40 or 50 bucks. And then meanwhile, you'd find it somewhere else, either on Amazon. Amazon was just coming out then, or another store, but it wasn't a blindness store. They'd have the same clock for like $8. And that's ridiculous. Why are people paying all this extra money? The blindness taxes you might hear it referred to, or the same thing. So we started to find these deals and we would post them. So it was blindness stuff, anything from, like I said, talking clocks and watches or braille displays, or mainstream stuff. So back then we found deals on 32 meg memory cards, not gig. I think we were selling, so really old memory cards, but we would find them for really cheap and we would post on there. And just to get a bit into the weeds, you're certainly not going to get rich off of doing a site like that, but you could make a few bucks by what's called affiliate links. In other words, you create a link, and this worked better back then than it would now. You can still do it. It's just not as lucrative as it could be. So you would put links to a store like Amazon or Best Buy or whatever you want. And then if someone clicked that link and bought something, you would get a small, and I do mean small percentage, 2%, 3%. But, somebody might purchase a $10 thing, or they might go on to buy a TV for $1,000. So then, you get 20 bucks off of $1,000. So it was a nice kind of little way to get some beer money during college and just kind of play around some things. Did some other things during college as well. Sold some stream hosting, internet radio, voice chat, just a lot of dabbling into little side projects. And I think I started to realize the freedom that availed you, being able to go out and be out by yourself and live and die by your decisions. Some weeks you would make a few bucks and you would do well, and next week you might make nothing, and you'd have to figure out how to get by or save money and figure it out from there. So Blind Bargains led me to deciding to go down to an ATIA conference was in Orlando, Florida, still is. That's Assistive Technology Industry Association conference. And I think that first year got really cheap tickets. I think this was the early days of Spirit Airlines. So got down there really cheap, found a really cheap hotel, et cetera, to, on a budget, go to ATIA, but with the idea of recording interviews, do podcasting, because there was a lot of blindness podcasts out there back then, but not tons. So went around and did a bunch of podcasts and recorded them. They are still up there if you really wanted to see what it sounded like in 2008. And they're pretty poorly done, but they're out there. And in the midst of that, ran into a couple companies, one being Code Factory, and got to talking to them about selling the old phone software called Mobile Speak. This was back when you had to put software on your phone to make it talk. So, a screen reader on your phone, it was $300 or so, and you had to buy it. And got to talking to them about what would it look like to sell that. And it was pretty scary at first, because they're like, well, you could sell it, and we'd love you for you to do it. Need you to buy 8 licenses per quarter, or 32 licenses a year. Okay, do the math on that. You're getting that at a dealer price, maybe a couple $100 a piece, but that's still committing several $1,000s over a year to buy that software. So thought about it. It was daunting, but you're talking about taking risks, and that definitely was a risk. But the reason I think I was able to make that work was because we already had a built-in audience. So because we had Blind Bargains, that meant we now had people that we could advertise to and sell to. Because if I would have just put up this website and just tree in the forest and no one was around, then you wouldn't have any customers. You wouldn't be able to figure out how to get to that site. So the first couple of years were definitely it was pretty slow and trying to figure out what's going on and trying to figure out how to sell things and how to make money. So I was doing other jobs at the time. I wasn't full-time into the business. I was still working at a summer camp. I was doing some other programs here and there. and but slowly started to grow and take on other products and other risks. And it was a risk, yes, it was a calculated risk to try to figure out what products we're going to sell. So that kind of led to other things. Then it started, we're going to sell the ANFB reader, then we're going to sell screen protectors, then we're going to sell keyboards and power banks and all sorts of other things. And it moved kind of relatively slow for a long time, but it certainly became a way to generate income so that I could live on the income from the business. Now, what that looks like now is a few different things. One of the things that really helped me accelerate the business, this was way up a lot more recently. In 2020, I got involved in a program called Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses over in Detroit. And that was a program it's a business accelerator. In other words, it's designed to take a business, work with a business that's already started out, you're making some money, you want to get bigger. And they paired you with a whole bunch of professors and other people that really know business stuff. And you went there once a week, and then it was COVID. So we ended up doing the rest of it on Zoom to kind of get those next steps. Like, how do you make those moves from what you would call, as a new business owner, you're working in the business. In other words, you're working on all of the day-to-day stuff. So eventually the goal being working on the business, so you can hire someone else to take care of the customer service calls and sales calls, and you can work on finding more business and making it bigger. So now you notice, if you call AT guys, we have a couple people. We have Damasi and Jacob, and we had Michael Babcock before, and they're the ones that I was able to afford to hire to answer those calls, and I'm able to go around and do other things. So business has now given me freedom to take on other projects. Been working on I'm actually able to do work with someone to do an entire summer program, a youth program, which has always been a passion of mine. And I wouldn't have been able to do that 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, because I was too embedded into the business. But now that I'm able to hire others to work on parts of the business, I'm able to take on new projects. So I've been doing that and doing some consulting work, working on some COVID research, a lot of different things. So just to give a couple minutes about what the business looks like now, we have a website that's online. So anyone who's not familiar, AT Guys, we sell access technology products. So everything from keyboards and speakers to braille products, slates, power banks, etc., all sorts of different things. So our primary mode of business is on our website. We use Shopify, which is probably one of the most popular e-commerce online platforms these days. So we pay them a monthly fee to have our website there. We used to write our own website and do all that, and we just realized eventually that wasn't worth our time. It was better just to pay someone else to manage that for us. So we still manage our site, but we're paying a web company that's designed to do website stores. So Shopify is our store, that's our website. And then we're also able to take orders over the phone. We can take orders in person, and this is all accessible, by the way. One of the biggest things that's been important to me from the beginning is that what we do in business, we want it to be able to be accessible for a blind person. I don't want to have a situation where we have to have, quote unquote, the sighted assistant to do a lot of the paperwork and admin stuff. We do everything digitally, electronically, whether it's taking orders in person or over the phone. It's okay to ask for help. That's fine. I'll use Ira or other tools here and there, but we're never going to hire someone just to be the eyes in that case. Perhaps the one exception is we do have some people that help us do some graphic design work and marketing, although AI is helping us do that even a little more independently now as well. So that's our primary business. We do e-commerce. Now we do a little bit of training as well. So we've done some group training for some states as well as individual one-on-one. And I do some consulting work here and there as well. Still a little bit of podcasting, some audio tutorials, things like that. So to dabble in a lot of different areas and try a lot of different things. And again, that's the freedom that you have by owning a business. Now, you live and die by your decisions, and that reflects in how much money you're going to make in any given week, month, or year. But the cool thing is these days, and especially with an online site, we have so much data that we can use to track that. I can look up right now and I can see how much we've sold today, this week, this month. I can see instant. It might freak some people out, but you guys know how it is with the internet these days. I can look right now and see how many people are on our website right now if I wanted to, and try to learn about them. So we have access to lots of information, and of course we do it in a way. We're not going to sell your data like a lot of companies will, but we have access to that, so we can use it to try to figure out the best ways to get everyone the information and the products they want. So our website's atguys.com. For anyone who's not familiar, I encourage you to check that out. But honestly, you can also use it to contact me if you have questions about starting a business and figuring out what those risks are that you might want to take. So I'll stop. I'm sure there might be some questions later on.
JJ, thank you so much for that. That's absolutely amazing. Now, Normally what we do is we break for Q&A, but what I want to do is I want to have Tricia actually go through hers first so that you guys get two different perspectives, kind of talking about similar or, unique journeys to each of them. And then we'll come back for the Q&A. So, Tricia, it is so great to be with you again. Why don't we make sure you're unmuted first?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are. Excellent. We'll go ahead and get you started 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll give you a cue as well. So go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I just want to piggyback onto a few things that JJ said. We also have a website. It is also a Shopify website. And one of the advantages that we found is that we need a lot of back end right now done based on the expansion of our business. So we're able to hire freelancers who specialize in Shopify, who inexpensively and easily can, in the instance of, let's just say, the fact that we added all kid sizes and tall sizes. Initially, when we put that on our website, it didn't include that. But because there are Shopify experts that can just go do that seamlessly, and that's not my expertise, they're actually currently doing that on my website. So there's a huge, huge advantage. I agree to using Shopify as well. In terms of taking risks, that I think is, so on point. It's really the name of the game in terms of being an entrepreneur. I agree that, we get to live our life and do what we want and have our business be as big as we want. But, those bad decisions that we make, we own those as well. So you have to really be able to be very, very honest with yourself, have people who you are able to speak to that will be honest back to you in order to really be a successful entrepreneur. It's a very, very tough thing. You have to be able to have a good backbone in order to run the business. And again, really similar to JJ, we are a blind owned business, and we make product for the blind community. And we also do a lot of phone orders. We do conventions. We do fundraisers within the blind community. We have a website. And in addition, I also do public speaking. So we have a lot of commonalities. And part of that is that, if you're interested in being an entrepreneur, you have to consider, who is it that you're selling to? What is your focus? What is the niche? Why would somebody, for instance, come to a martial arts studio for people with disabilities? That would probably be people with disabilities. So one of the things, if you're considering doing something like that, is really focusing on people with disabilities and what their needs are, and really just putting those, like what they put on horses so they can't see on the left and they can't see on the right, focus dead straight ahead on that. And so that is really kind of the story of Blind Girl Designs. I have retinitis pigmentosa, and I spent most of my career in fashion. My job was to fly all over the world and do fashion trends for major US corporations. So what that means is that I've been to 48 countries and all 7 continents. And I was diagnosed with RP in 2000, got my first white cane in 2010. And my classic kind of version of RP is that, kind of march into darkness. And about 2018, I was no longer able to look at thousands of images a day in order to do my job as a chief merchandising officer. And I lost my job. And, I'm going to be honest, I really am competitive. I am competitive as can be. And I honestly thought that I could outrun RP. And because I had been able to integrate my white cane and being able to make my workplace accessible as I continued to his vision. But, there just became that point where I only had an 11-degree field of vision where that was just not a real thing anymore. So I just had to tell you guys, I took a pause, laid on the floor, cried, figured out that was not going to be my future, and eventually got it together and realized that, running a business, and this is for all of us to know, running a business is in our head. It is not in our eyes, right? So when JJ was talking about going into the accelerator in order to be able to accelerate his business, all the info that he was learning from those pros was all intellectual information. It was really information sharing. So I was able to come to the, understanding that I can actually design designs in my head and then, sketch them. And so I launched Blind Girl Designs about about 5 years ago. And my whole deal was to, call it the way it was. I'm blind and I'm designing, and my focus is on the blind community. And in terms of community support, we would not be here without the support of the blind community. And people ask me, oh my gosh, how do you get all these, great ideas to do your business? Well, because people are very, very verbal in our community. And they say, wait, you did a guide dog shirt? Where's the I love my dog shirt? Wait, I have a cat. And so then the ideas, keep flowing. But in terms of the actual business aspect of running the business, I have a really gigantic background. I mean, I've worked with Wall Street, I have run billion-dollar companies. So I have a lot of the tools in the toolbox in order to sit down and write a business plan and understand growth. And in terms of one of the questions somebody asked at the very beginning, which is, when did you break even? We broke even, or we actually started making money last year, about 3.5 years into our company. Now, this will be very different for everyone that has their own business as an entrepreneur. You can set your business up so that you don't have a capital expense or you don't have overhead, so that you will make a few things and sell them, and you will immediately start making money and be able to function off cash flow. So we did at Blind Girl Designs is I had a little bit of money in the bank. That was the initial investment in my product. And since that time, our growth has been fueled by the cash flow of our business, which is really great because we have a website and people pay us and we ship to them, or we go to a convention. We have to invest in the product before we go to the convention. We have to pay for the plane tickets. We have to pay for the table fee. But then we sell product and that generates cash flow for us to pay for the tickets for the next. So when we started our company, our only goal was to first get our name out in the blind community and do fabulous prints that were tactile and accessible to the blind community, and to be able to make as much money from a cash flow standpoint to be able to continue to fund the business. So that was our goal. And really the IRS at 5 years, which in my case would be on January 1st, you have to actually make money or they will consider your business a hobby. So just from a business standpoint, that's how we approached it. We talk about it this is something, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, talking about the positioning and the growth of your business is an everyday question. Do you want to get financing from an angel? Do you want to get venture capital financing? Do you want somebody else involved in your business? In my case, no. In my case, do I think we'll be able to continue to have organic growth, like a really lot of organic growth as we continue to go forward? In my case, the answer is yes. And we're really happy with our growth. So one of the things, another thing that JJ mentioned is the people that are working with him. So when I started my company, I had my niece is got a master's degree in web design. So she did our web design, all of our email marketing, set up our list. I have a graphic designer on gig work. There's an ink company that I started working with when I started my company that have developed a really strong relationship with that does all of our ink. We have now back end guys for the financial as well as for the Shopify. So everybody that in my company that works with me is a gig worker. And then we have the people who maybe didn't think they were going to be part of Blind Girl Designs, but my husband, who is married to me, is an integral part of my company, and my son Robert as well. So if you are somewhere in the vicinity of an entrepreneur, you are by default, a gig worker for that entrepreneur. That is just, in my book, the nature of having a family run business, or, having people that are at hand that can, in my case, they're both sighted. So when we're reviewing the artwork, I have some super critical people who actually now have 5 years of experience of what really sells at Blind Girl Designs, who are really direct and helpful in terms of, what, I don't love that balance. You think that color is bright enough. So I'm a really big on collaborating. I'm big on collaborating, not only in terms of my art, but in terms of talking about the growth and direction of my company, as well as where I'm making a misstep that might be out of really the mainstream of where we want to go with the company. And that will happen. Get an order, or you'll get somebody asking you to do something. In my case, people who are sighted that want me to do stuff. And we really, just shift back and focus. And so right now we have we actually have 4 different revenue streams. We sell product at conventions. We go to national conventions and state conventions. We do fundraisers on our website under Blind Community Fundraisers. We just have our regular organic sales on their website. And I am actually also a paid public speaker as well. So that's Blind Girl Designs.
Awesome. And again, a huge thanks to you and to JJ for coming on. Now, JJ and Tricia, sit tight for me for about 6-7 minutes, and then we're going to come to you guys for Q&A. Before we do, I have a challenge for each of you. Remember, I said, listen to see the world through their point of view, right? And to get as much wisdom as you can. Now, there's no pecking order on this one, but what I'd love to do is I'd love to just have a very quick conversation with all of you. We normally will do this in small groups. We're going to do it as a large group tonight. I want to know, as you listen to the panelists, what did you hear and what are your reactions? There are going to be 5 of you who want to move this right into Q&A. I'm going to ask you to hold those questions for me. But first, tell us, what did you hear from the panelists? And what's a reaction that you're having? And Roseanne, I'm going to put you on the spot and see if you'll help me kick this off. Is that okay?
What's
Awesome.
my reaction?
Yeah. And what is like a couple things that you took away?
Oh my gosh. Just take risks. That's one thing, not to be afraid to take risks. And then I was impressed by how many people you need in your life to support you in your venture. And you got to reach out and find those people. And yeah, those 2 things.
That's awesome. Anybody else want to jump in here? What did you hear? What are your reactions? Don't be shy. We like engagement here.
This is Doug.
All right.
I noticed that, yes, they took the risk, but they also were very thoughtful about it and looked at what they had, what they wanted to do, and how independent they could be. For instance, JJ, he moved into the business slowly as it organically grew, as opposed to just sort of, quitting all his work and trying to put 100% into his business. And so I thought it was a very thoughtfully done. And I think Tricia did the same thing in her own way.
Amazing. Others, I got time for 3 more. What did you hear? And what are your reactions to what you heard? Don't be shy. Just come off mute. Tell us your name and what did you hear and what are your reactions?
Hi, this is Maria.
Hi, Maria. Go ahead.
Yes, I learned that she talked about, of course, we talked about opening up martial arts school for the people with disabilities. And one of them is the, maybe low vision. And she talked about, having the focus, see what the needs are of your clientele, like whatever, I guess, visual disability they have, because as you know, some of them could be just straightforward. You could just see straightforward. Some of them would be manifesting it better with darker lighting or something. That's what I understood. She was trying to say, focus on that one.
Amazing. Absolutely. Got time for 2 more, and then we're going to go into that Q&A. Remember, Alt-A unmutes your computer if you're on a PC, Command-Shift-A to unmute on the Mac. All right, then. So let's move into the Q&A. I've got a hand raised. Let me just pop right up here. Looks like Doug has a question. Doug, go ahead and jump into your question.
Thanks. This is for either one or both. Did you get any help from the rehabilitation agency, that your local rehabilitation agency, or your small business administration? Was there any help available to you other than, I know, the Goldman Sachs thing that JJ talked about, but I was wondering if there was anything else.
In my case, basically my retinal guy said, hey, you went from legally blind to really, really blind, and bye-bye. So I didn't get any support from anything, nor did I even know where to look for support, nor did I know about ACB or NFB. In my case, I was just one of those people that just went blind that just was, and I come across a lot of them at conventions. So in my case, no, I just used my business skills really to start my company. I didn't have the biggest support, or the biggest portion of the blind community is the blind community itself in terms of buying my
Hmm.
product and supporting me. But I didn't receive, or I've considered SBA, but again, there's a lot, I'm at a pretty low level in terms of, I'm not like $1 million company. So a lot of the SBA stuff is for people who haven't, actually ever had a company. And so that is like fantastic, information. In my case, I had a whole bunch of skills already that I had been using for quite a long period of time in terms of running a business.
Love it. JJ, weigh in on this one for me.
Sure. So I guess starting with rehab, not much. Unfortunately, in every state's rehab is different as far as the way they operate. Some are great and some are not so much. Rehab to me was just very transactional. So their goal is to close your case. So the only thing I was able to do with them, because they wanted to close my case, is I did tell them a couple of things that I was looking for and was able to get a new computer bought for me because I was looking for one at the time. So they were happy to do that because that meant in their eyes I could close my case, and they did. So that's about what happened there. I do think there are some good resources out there. SCORE is one. That's the Service Corps of Retired Entrepreneurs. I didn't get a ton out of that, but I think a lot of it depends on who you get matched with as an entrepreneur. There are a lot of resources out there between them and other small business development centers, things like that, as far as especially helping you with the initial formation. That's one thing I think it would be good to mentor with someone as far as what type of business are you going to form, whether it's an LLC, which is what we have, or a sole proprietorship or something else. Figuring out what your business plan is. Now, I did not, you should write a business plan when you start. I did not, but, so it doesn't mean you have to, but it's certainly helpful. I, at least in my mind, had some ideas. So I think more so I've picked up resources along the way as opposed to a lot at the beginning.
Yeah. And I think one thing to note, I mean, being an entrepreneur myself in my past, it does take, and I think Roseanne was talking about this, right? Or Doug was talking about this. You're taking risks, but you're figuring out how to do them. I call them calculated risks, right?
Mhm.
And ways that, I don't just want to leave it all on the field and put all my eggs in one basket, if you will. But at the same time, there does come a point where you have to say, okay, I'm in. I'm all in. Here we go. Right. And what's the journey look like? Other questions? If you've got questions, raise your hand. I'm trying to keep my ears open for that. I'm not seeing any hands raised yet. So while we're waiting, I'm going to ask the two of you, what do you wish you would have known at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey that you've learned since starting? And Tricia, you went first last time, so we'll go with you, JJ. What do you wish you could have told yourself when you were starting?
It's a loaded question, right? Because you're always learning something new, and you learn something and said, "Oh my gosh, why did I not do it this way 10 years ago?" And sometimes it's something small. For instance, Michael Babcock, when he came on, was the one that told me about Pirate Ship, which is just a free website you can use for printing labels and such. And it's just one of those, oh, that's been around for so many years and I just never knew about it. So sometimes it's little things like that. I think it's earlier on, especially, and it still happens to me sometimes, right? Realizing that sometimes it is worth it to just pay someone else to do the thing, whether it's accounting or whether it's, some sort of tedious task that you are no good at, but you're trying to do because you're trying to save money as a small business person. And sometimes, even though the bill for the thing might be way more than what you think it's, you want to pay, it's just going to be off your plate. And sometimes it's worth doing that.
I had a business partner back in the day, JJ, actually sit me down and say, I understand why you want to do this because you want to prove to the world that as a blind guy you can, but you're an owner of a business and you should have somebody else doing this. If you're trying to, and I'm going to come back, you said earlier, he's like, I need you to be working on the business, not in the day to day. Right. So that's, yep. Tricia, what do you got? What do you wish you would have been able to tell yourself 5 years ago before you started? And Vicky, I'm coming to you in just a minute.
You know what? I think it's an evolution. I don't really have any regrets or go back and look at, geez, I wish we would have done that earlier, because pretty much as stuff has unfolded, I really feel like one of my big beliefs is if you don't know what you want to do, don't do anything. Like when I was really struggling about getting external financing, I was a lot of conversation. All of my confidants were talking about it. I didn't do anything And then my business just organically exploded. And then I didn't need to worry about cash flow. So, I guess my big thing is just to be patient, be cautious, be focused, be aware. But I really wouldn't change anything because right now my business is quite large. And 5 years ago, it would have killed me to be able to run a business this size. So I feel like it's evolved, because I have an assistant designer. We have
Yeah.
we have people going to both conventions. So yeah, I think it all turned out just fine. And I totally agree with JJ about downloading that stuff. That's an entrepreneurial thing. Offloading the stuff that we are bad at, making sure that there's somebody who's a specialist is doing it and not us, so that we can think about our company.
It becomes a return on investment, right?
It
That,
totally does. It's
yeah,
so much cheaper. It ends up in the long term being so much cheaper to pay somebody who has that skill set that we don't have than trying
right.
to do it ourselves, because there's some stuff we're just really not good at.
Vicky is coming to us with a question. Vicky.
I have two things. JJ, I remember Blind Bargains. I remember going on that website when it came out. But Tricia, could you talk a little bit about what you sell on your site? What kind of clothing do you sell?
Sure.
Tell me.
Yeah.
I'd like to know the different things you have.
Okay. Let me tell you some of our bestseller. Let me just say we sell t-shirts, crew neck sweatshirts, hooded sweatshirts, zip hooded sweatshirts, tote bags, and aprons. And we have two different kinds of ink. One is a lightly tactile, but you could not read Braille on it, just so you know.
Right, that's okay.
Bright ink, brightly colored ink that we use with a backer on it. And then the other one is a 3D puff ink that we use specifically to make for anything that we have brailled. And let me just tell you, everything on our website has either Braille in the art or has white canes in the art. Best sellers that we're shipping this week are, one of them is a sunflower, which is a big sunflower with that big circle on the inside of it. The leaves are bright yellow, tactile leaves, petals. And then on the inside, it says, "You are my sunshine," both in letters as well as Braille.
Okay.
Also in yellow. And that's printed on all those different items. I have a brand new butterfly that's based on a monarch butterfly. It's exactly a monarch butterfly, but I made a couple substitutions around the edge of the wing. Instead of black, I put bright blue, and where they have little white dots, I put little white hearts.
Okay.
The body of the butterfly is two white canes, and the straps of the white canes at the top of the straps form a heart. And we have another one called Braille Heart, which is completely tactile. It's a heart that I drew. It has the letters A through Z in it. And next to every letter is that letter in Braille. And so we have about 35 different prints. We have an entire Americana collection with US flags and a brand new print called America, America, with the song America, God Shed His Grace on Me, written in letters and in Braille as well. We have an entire Christmas line, a whole Halloween line. We have a whole flower line. So we have products for men and women. At Christmas time, we also have we do kids, small through large, but at Christmas, we will also do some infants and toddler stuff because a lot of people want to do family Christmas stuff.
Oh, that's cute.
And our t-shirts start at 29. Our sweatshirts are 44, hoodies 49, zip hoodies 59, and tote bags are 36.
Okay,
And
thank you. Thank you so
yeah.
much.
Thank you. And there's no shipping and handling
Oh,
on
okay.
anything.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we do have time for more questions. Before we do that, though, I would be remiss if I didn't give JJ an opportunity to talk about AT Guys is selling as well, to kind of cover that for anybody who may not know. Hey, JJ, I don't know that I'm going to spend as much as I did last year. I went a little berserker at the AT Guys booth last week, but go ahead.
So we have a newer speaker.
He's trying to get
the
me.
Blast, yeah, because we have the Blast 2 now. So I'll come at that in a second. So just briefly, we do a variety of access technology products. So we really try to focus on things, of course, that are accessible. So it's one thing, whether it's a blindness product or a mainstream product, if you find it on our website, that means it's been tested by blind people and it's going to work. We will give you help. We'll give you manuals if you need it. We will talk you through it. So if you go to our site, you will find a variety of things. So the blindness side, we have a lot of Braille products. So really popular right now is the Braille Doodle, which is a tactile Braille teaching learning aid and also just a really cool drawing aid on the other side as well. So there's two-sided. So the one side is the Braille and the other side is the drawing where you can draw in Braille. So that's one thing. You also have the Versa, which is a paperless Braille slate. That's a site that you can use for writing without using paper. So that's a really cool thing as well. We also have the Hable and the Hable Easy, and these are wireless braille keyboards that you can use with your phone. And also the Hable Easy is a wireless remote that you can use. It actually looks just like the regular Hable, but you can use it to control your iPhone or your Android. I'm going really fast through things, but you guys can of course call us or go to our website and learn more. We have a lot of Bluetooth keyboards ranging from a folding Bluetooth keyboard with a numpad, a tiny Bluetooth keyboard that you can put in your hands, to a full-size Bluetooth keyboard. It doesn't fold, it also has a numpad. And we've also added a new one that's a large print Bluetooth keyboard right on black with a backlight that also has a number pad on it. We have several different speakers ranging from a small portable one called the Stormbox 2. That's a little handheld kind of speaker with a handle that also has a line-in jack that you can plug it in and connect something like a Victor Stream or a reader, to much larger ones. That Blast 2 is 200 watts of power. It has quarter-inch inputs. You can actually plug in microphones to do karaoke. It has this booming bass. It's about 15 pounds. Crazy loud, twice as loud as the Blast 1, which we had last year. So that thing is crazy. So we have a variety ranging from $70 up to $300. We have our accessible power banks that you can use to charge your gadgets on the go, and they are accessible because you can press a button on the side to vibrate or beep to know how much power is left. We have the Shocks bone conduction headsets, and those come in the traditional style that come around the back of your head. And we also now have wireless earbuds that sit in front of your ear called Open Fit to use them as a Bluetooth earpiece. We also have Bluetooth earbuds. We have USB mics, a lot of other really cool gadgets and tech. So again, our website is atguys.com, and we're a small business. So leave a voicemail if you don't get someone live. 269-216. 4798 is the phone number. And of course, you can email us as well at support@atguys.com.
Got time for a couple more questions. Anybody got more questions about becoming an entrepreneur? If so, raise your hand or just come off mute if that is not a possibility for you. Anybody, any questions?
So, hi, my name is Joe. I'm Maria's.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, how y'all doing? I guess in listening to both of these entrepreneurs' different ideas, it seems as if, Tricia, you actually had a targeted idea in mind for your business, having had experience in that before. So questions for both of you. For Tricia, how were you able to refine going from being like the chief merchandising officer and so to speak, having your hands in all these different pies in this company to down to one, I guess, related business? And also kind of in the same breath, JJ, it looks like you kind of organically moved into your area of business from trying many different things. How were y'all able to refine your skill sets into making that special idea work?
That is a great question. All right. Who wants to go first on this one?
I'll go. That is a really great question. So it was really a shocker because when you're a CMO, there you have tons of people, you have tons of teams, you're managing the business, you worked your way up from the bottom. So the big advantage that I had is that, well, in my case, I really knew about international production, international fashion, color, design, all that other kind of stuff internationally. Okay. I didn't really have a big familiarity. I had never printed a t-shirt in my life. Let's just get that right out of the way. That was a YouTube video. That's how I learned print t-shirts, right? Where to buy t-shirt blanks, what the best t-shirt blanks are. That was all buying all different t-shirt blanks and washing them and drying them and measuring the shrinkage on them. Now, the big shockerino is when you go from having a big high-powered job in New York, starting your own company in Houston, Texas. I'm going to be honest, it's like really frustrating because I didn't have any resources at that time when I started. I had me and the knowledge that I had of my business. So I really had to adjust and take a lot of deep breaths because I was literally doing everything until, I mean, I had a web designer, of course, but I was doing everything until I first got my assistant designer. So really getting that good direction. In the first year that we started, we got asked to be in November in a virtual sales thing. And I listened to all of the previous tapes of this event and everybody had Christmas stuff. And I didn't have any Christmas stuff. And so I took all my white canes on the back patio with my son and we laid them all out until I could make it look like a snowflake. And so I designed a snowflake out of white canes. And that was the very first print And then from there, all hell broke loose and it never stopped. Because once I started doing stuff that was totally blind related, the ideas from customers, the needs, I mean, I started by selling t-shirts at that event. And people were like, I'm from Minnesota. Can you do a hoodie? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah. Let's get that on the website, and then get that on the website, as soon as I can within 24 hours. So that's really what happened. And I still sell dresses and cardigans and other apparel, particularly at the national conventions. But that was the really big aha moment for me. And it has just continued. And, I continue to lose vision. And the more vision I lose, the more creative my brain gets in terms of ideas of product to create.
What I love about your story, and Joe, stay off of mute for just a second for me. But what I love about that, Tricia, is you're really highlighting another key piece, which is you're listening to your clients, right? And they
Oh, that's
come up and they
critical.
say, I need this, I need this. And I know both of you do that. That's actually why I like working with both of you, because you're doing that. Now, Joe, if JJ is like me, he just totally got sidetracked listening to Tricia's answer. So can you give him a bullet point, ask your question again so that we've got a fresh ask?
Okay, so yeah, we know Tricia had already some experience and stuff in fashion, and kind of a foot in the door in that world. So it was like a kind of a more organic transition. Whereas JJ, it seems like you did the old, try and see what works. You know what I mean? What led you into that like idea? Like how did your successful idea come into fruition then?
Thanks, Joe, for re-asking.
Honestly, a lot of it probably was either just by accident or just one thing led to another thing. Like I said, the tech interest was always there. Liking and knowing that I wanted to do something with tech was always there. I just didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. And I think coming through college and just having, like I was talking about earlier, realizing the freedom that can be, or in the money that can be made by buying and selling things and, buying at wholesale and selling at retail. But again, taking a stab in the dark. And I think some of the early things that I bought, I did without as much product research versus what we would do now. So I think it's just nothing really in one thing in particular led me there. I think it was just kind of a combination of circumstances over time. And I know that kind of sounds vague, but just realizing that I enjoyed being able to set my own hours. I mean, one of the things about that, I think, and that was a big thing for me because I like going to things like the blindness conventions, advocating in DC, doing a bunch of other things like that. And if you do all that type of stuff, well, that's like 2, 3, 4 weeks a year, or it can be. Okay, you're not going to get that much time off from a 9 to 5. If I can parlay some of that into making those trips into trips that I can make money, then I can do what I love and do what I love at the same time. So I think that was also part of it as well.
Awesome. Any other burning questions? If not, I'm going to move us into some resources that might be available to help, and we'll start wrapping up tonight's call. Any other questions? You've got to ask them. If you don't ask them, this has just not been worth your time. Okay. So I wanted to, again, I'm going to come back to you, JJ and Tricia, at the very end of this particular piece and just ask for some final thoughts from you. Before I do, I want to leave people with some things to remember as you're considering looking at entrepreneurism, right? And looking at, okay, I want to start my own business. And these are some things that in my consulting days, I used to actually coach people on. And so the first is connect your purpose with your passion. An old friend of mine, who's actually, by the way, JJ, from Michigan. Me being from Ohio originally, I'm going to try not to hold that against anybody. But purpose and passion. My friend used to say, if you have not defined where there is, how are you going to know if you arrived? For me, personally, when I was 8 years old, I used to teach people. I would pretend that I was holding classes all day long. This is what I did in my spare time, right? And I kind of knew that there was this piece of me that wanted to teach and wanted people to be able to be more informed about what options they had and the tools that they could do. And that is what has driven most of my career decisions. When you are not identifying what your purpose is and what you're passionate about, then it's hard to chart a course to get there if you don't really know where there is. I find that it's helpful if you're going to go into business for yourself, please remember, like, there's this concept that says, oh, it's great, I get to set my own schedule. You absolutely do. But as both of our panelists talked about tonight, you are also tied to your own success and the success of your business when it comes to your livelihood. So make sure that if you're going to go into business and do something for yourself and for the community or run your own business, that it is something that you like doing. There's nothing more sad to me as a coach for people that they're doing something that they don't like doing. It just makes you feel like you're stuck, and it's really hard to get out of. The third tip that I want to leave you with is react strategically. And so, yes, you want to be strategic. You don't always want to be reacting, and changing your whole direction. But at the same time, you don't want to not listen to the feedback that you're giving. Both panelists have talked about tonight. You got to pay attention to your clientele, understand what they need, and be able to meet them where they're at, but do it strategically. Look for those trends in data, or as Tricia was talking about, this explosion for what people were wanting, buzz that was happening. Fourth is plan. And there's a joke, which is in my line of work, which is just because you planned it doesn't mean you have to do exactly what's on your plan, but at least you know what you're going to change. And it gives you the ability to be strategically reacting when you need to, when you've got a plan in place. What we used to do is we used to do a plan for the year, and then we'd revisit it at the beginning of each quarter and figure out where are we seeing things that are happening that we didn't expect, and where can we be doing better. And the last one is execute. Something is a great idea, that's fantastic, but put it into play. And the way that you do that is you start chunking it up. Okay, this is my purpose. This is where I want to be in 4 years. How am I going to get to that? Again, you're making that plan of execution, you're working your plan, and the things that are working, great, keep doing those. The things that aren't, stop doing those. Or one of the things that I actually learned, and I'm proud to say this actually, is when I owned my own company, I never stopped to ask someone to show me how to sell. And I really wish I had done that, because what it ended up happening is I undervalued me, right? And when that happens, it's really hard to make that next step as a business and do what you need to do. So always look on how are you executing your plan? How are you evaluating whether it's working or not? And what changes can you make going forward? Before we wrap up, I want to invite JJ and Tricia. We'll start with you, Tricia, first, and we'll come to you, JJ. What is one thing you want to leave people with tonight as they are considering starting their own business or exploring that route? So, Tricia, what's one thing you want to leave them with?
I have more than one, but I'm going to make a couple notes. One is I totally concur about being passionate. I am completely passionate about my business, about what I do every day, and passionate about giving back to the blind community. One of the things I didn't talk about is that we donate a lot of stuff to doorbusters and auctions all over the country. And that is really, really important, because we aren't $1 million business, but people bid ridiculous amounts at auctions that can raise quite a bit of money to support scholarships and other needs in the blind community. So that really makes us even more passionate. The other thing I just want to say is I love what JJ has said repeatedly about setting his own hours, being able to, kind of ebb and flow with his business so that it flows with his life. That is a big upside if you're an entrepreneur. I love that part of it. I could not go back to a 9 to 5 after doing this, because sometimes I work till 2 a.m. and sometimes I just don't work that day because I'm totally fried out. So, and then the other thing he said, and I didn't do it, which is my website is blindgirldesigns.com, or you can just yell at your device, Blind Girl Designs, and we'll pop up. And my phone number is 862-448-1011. And that's it for us.
That's awesome. And you know what, JJ, I'm coming to you for your final thought in just a second. But one thing I do want to say, please don't hesitate to check into the resources that are available to you through your state agencies. I do some work with Penny Forward on the side, and there are some states that are having us at Penny Forward lead people through starting their businesses. And so always check in to see if you've got those services available to you. If there's one thing that I have realized is that we don't always do so great at looking at what resources can we tap into there. JJ, final thoughts as people are thinking about maybe going this route.
Sure, I'm going to do a couple of things as well. One is just realizing that, we've talked about a lot of really exciting things as far as starting a business, but also realize that it may or may not be for you because of that level of risk, because of that level of financial insecurity that you do have to go through for a time. Maybe it's something that you start part-time at first. So just think about that as there's a lot of really cool things about it, but of course, we didn't talk a lot about there are a lot of drawbacks and things that can go wrong. So, level of risk, there's that word again, if you're willing to take it, or just the type of person that you are might dictate whether this is the right path for you. And maybe it could be a side hustle as well. And that's totally cool. Maybe it evolves. The other thing I will definitely throw out there, and going on to with what Jeremy's talking about with resources, is networking. And I always, whenever I go to one of these things, I look and see who's in the room. I scan through the Zoom list and I look for people that I might want to talk to. And then I also try to make connections, and even for instance, with Tricia, we've known of each other for a while. We've had tables at the same conventions, but we really haven't connected much before. And I'm going to probably make an effort to do that after, because it's cool to collab with other blind-owned businesses. So it's kind of being on the lookout for opportunities to help each other, because I'm definitely a big believer in small helping small.
That's awesome. All right, let's come back to the larger group. I know we're ending here very shortly. Does anybody have any other final thoughts or things that you want to throw out? Maybe something that you're going to do because you heard this conversation tonight, or anything that you want to throw out about tonight's program. We're open to that before we bring it to a close. Anyone? Don't hesitate to just unmute if that's easier for you.
Hi, it's Joe again.
Go ahead, Joe.
After I make this comment, I would like to get y'all's phone numbers again, just because I'm not sure if I got them correctly the first time. But one thing that really stuck out to me that you actually both highlighted in different ways, JJ, you said it, transitioning from working in the business to on the business, which Tricia also did mention, how it's okay to outsource, right? You don't have to do it yourself. And I think that something that maybe we're going to look into are like AI assistants, right? Because as this emerging technology just becomes more prevalent in the business world, it's something that's cost effective. You can refine it yourself, and it's certainly not that you're tying yourself to like a physical employee, or a creative or somebody else to do that work. And let me know if y'all have like negative or positive thoughts.
I do use it a lot. There's good and bad to it, of course, but we definitely, it's part of what we do now, yes.
There are, absolutely. And Doug, how do we do the follow-up on these? Can we just put all the contact information in the follow-up?
Sure.
Okay. So we'll make sure that we get that out to everybody. That way, for those of you who weren't able to get it, make sure that you get phone numbers and, again, websites and so forth. Joe, this is really great. Any other final remarks before we conclude for today?
Yeah, this is Doug. I just like to say thanks to both of you. I've had interactions. Well, I've not met JJ before, but when I first got an iPhone, I bought an overlay from AT Guys that had dots on it so I could help teach myself how to use the iPhone screen.
Oh my goodness.
This was a long time ago, but that was my start. And then Tricia, I'm also the president of the Alliance on Aging and Vision Loss, and we did a fundraiser through Blind Girl Designs last year. So I've been able to benefit from both of their businesses, and really appreciate their giving their time to this call.
Excellent. And one of the things that we'll do is we'll make sure we have contact information for JJ, for Tricia, who have both offered to be a source of knowledge as you're going. One of the things that I actually love to do with people, and I'll put myself in there as well in case you want to, I love having that initial conversation with people. Should I be an entrepreneur? What does that look like, right? And I'm always happy to help other people do that as well. Any other final thoughts? If you don't say it, you just are not going to be able to move on. Excellent. Well, I think this concludes tonight. Thank you to JJ. Thank you to Tricia for both of you coming and spending your time with ACB of Virginia. Doug, any other final words from the organization? I think we're done. And I think that's about it. This concludes tonight's program then. Thank you.